show that 5 of us are in and 1 of us is connecting. I guess that's the nature of minutes in the Zoom world, is that Rob Wirge is connecting as we speak. But we'll say that he's present. So I figured rather than make Ron wait until we do all kinds of business for the evening, I would just have him go first. That way he can present and then answer any questions and then conclude. So he is the second item on the agenda, Auditor's Report for fiscal year 18 to 19. So Ron, thank you for sending that presentation today. I forwarded it around to the other members. I'm happy to turn the floor over to you at this time.
We'll go through the presentation pretty quickly. I'm not the best at saying next slide, so I'll try my best to keep us all on the same slide relative to the slide deck, but it should go pretty quickly. So as I have in the past, we'll go through the engagement scope and reporting results. I'll talk about some financial highlights relative to the financial statements, and then just briefly go through the required auditor communications. So if you want to jump to the 3rd slide on that deck, just to reiterate what I've said to you in the past, the audit is performed actually under 3 sets of standards. It's performed under generally accepted auditing standards. It's performed as well under generally accepted governmental auditing standards, which you'll probably often hear me refer to as Yellow Book. And then it's also performed under Uniform Guidance, which was formerly the Federal Single Audit Act and the Connecticut State Single Audit Act. So there's really, it's a pyramid, if you will, relative to the authority and scope in which we perform the audit work in the town and in all cities and towns in the state of Connecticut. So the next slide, get into the reporting results. The primary audit opinion is the audit opinion under generally accepted auditing standards. That's page 1 of the audit document that you received from us, that is on our letterhead, and quite honestly, it's the only thing from a legal perspective that belongs to us or we're responsible for. Everything else in that document, being the financial statements and notes to the financial statements and supporting schedules, are in fact the representations of management. And while we do assist them in the preparation of those, they bear the responsibility for those financial statements. So reporting results under generally accepted auditing standards, that primary opinion, we issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion, which states that in our opinion, the financial statements fairly represent the financial position and results of operations of the town for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2019. Under the Yellow Book reporting, we report to you at the financial statement level, so really the entity level, any internal control matters that may reach the level of a material weakness or significant deficiency. And then we also are required to report to you any material non-compliance that we find relative to the performance, during the performance of our procedures. So under Yellow Book, for the fiscal year 2019's audit, we did have 2 material weaknesses that were identified relative to internal controls. And we did have 1 instance of non-compliance relative to a budget over expenditure in the general fund for the fiscal year. The 2 material weaknesses that were identified were relative to general ledger maintenance, really the fact that there were significant adjustments that needed to be made in order to complete the engagement and get the financial statements to a position where they fairly represent the financial position and results of operations. And then the other finding, bear with me 1 second, let me just set them open. It had to do with the budgetary compliance itself, that we felt as though because there was a significant over expenditure of a budget line item, that the monitoring of that perhaps bore some weakness and should be considered. The non-compliance matter related to that same budgetary compliance. So we had an internal control finding on it as well as a compliance finding on it. And then under uniform guidance. So I'm on what should be numbered slide 5 now. If you're looking at your deck, I think it's going to be, yeah, 5 of 19. Perfect. So under reporting, under uniform guidance, and under state single audit, we're doing very much the same thing that we do under Yellow Book. So we report to you any internal control matters, and we report to you any compliance matters, but these only pertain to the internal controls and the compliance requirements over the major federal or major state programs. They're not entity-wide level controls or compliance matters that we're looking at. So under uniform guidance for internal control, so your federal single audit, there were no material weaknesses that were identified relative to the controls over those major federal programs that we tested. Under state single audit, there was a significant deficiency that was identified relative to the early care and education program that was a major program and tested during the performance of our work. Then under compliance, relative to, again, federal, it was an unmodified or clean opinion over compliance relative to the major federal programs. And state single audit, we did qualify the opinion on the early care and education program relative to the finding that we had there. Again, it was a finding that related both to internal control as well as compliance itself due to the fact that we weren't able to obtain supporting documentation in order to perform some compliance testing. So there's no way we could form an opinion relative to compliance or non-compliance. So again, under compliance, uniform guidance was clean, state single audit qualified for that one program, and were unmodified or clean for all of the other major programs relative to state single audit. So that wraps up the reporting results, if you will. The next slide is just a snapshot as of June 30, 2019 of all of your fund balances and your governmental funds. As normal, I focus primarily on the general fund here, and you see general fund balance as of June 30, 2019 was $2,836,392. And of that balance, $2,354,218 is unassigned, and that represents a little over 9%. I think it's 9.1% of your total expenditures and transfers out in the general fund. So if you jump to the next slide, actually I have should be a slide in between those two. There's just some commentary relative to what transpired. So just again, relative to the highlights at the end of the fiscal year, total fund balance is 2.836. As I said, it was a decrease from the prior year of about $148,000, 148,292. That decrease was primarily due to planned use of general fund surplus. So you had budgeted $175,000 to come out of fund balance in order to balance that 2019 budget. So you were planning to run a $175,000 deficit as it was. So that's really what drove the depletion, if you will, of the fund balance. When you look at your fund balance relative to the percentage overall to expenditures and transfers out, as I said, it was represented, the unassigned portion represented 9.1% of total general fund expenditures and other financing uses. But I think it's fair in the case of the town of Thompson to add in your assigned fund balance as well, because the assignments are relative to future budgetary spending as opposed to earmarked for some particular project that is on hold or in waiting. So when you look at the two of them combined, your total coverage is 10.86. You know, in the past, the recommendations that come out of GFOA have been basically 1 to 2 months cash burn, if you will, for lack of a better term here, which really equates to, their range was always 7.5% to 15%. To be brutally honest with you, with what has transpired with the COVID pandemic, I don't know if that recommendation is valid anymore or not. Going into it, Many of us thought that it was way too low because we were going to see some significant depletion in revenues going down the line. The reality of it is, by the looks of things at this point in time, many cities and towns are ahead of where they thought they were going to be, just because of reduced spending based on the level of activities that's going on in your communities, relative to programs and things of that nature. So I would say, you're certainly still within the range of what GFOA is recommending, and we can all stay tuned as to whether or not that's going to remain valid, or if that's going to. I wouldn't perceive it ever going down, but it may climb up a little bit based on what Wall Street and how Wall Street reacts to the pandemic and what it does to local governments. Some more, if you want to jump ahead, some more general fund highlights. Just these are from a budgetary perspective. On a budgetary basis, not considering the planned use of surplus of $175,000, your actual revenues exceeded budgetary estimates for the year by $156,209. So I've got them. That first line that's presented on this table is all of your revenues, general revenues, if you will, and then I provide you with the other financing sources down below. So the total budgeted revenues, that number includes all of your fees for services, property taxes, miscellaneous revenues. I think you group them in the Department of Finance revenues. So you beat estimates by $156,000. If you look all the way to the right, that variable, the variation column there. And then when you peel out the 175 that you were planning on depleting, you miss your estimates by $18,791, which really isn't anything at all. So from the perspective of managing the revenue side of this, I would say you guys landed right where you had planned to, certainly within material reason. And the next slide is similar in nature, but it's the expenditure side. So overall for the year on a budgetary basis, actual expenditures exceeded planned or budgeted expenditure appropriations by $67,001. And this was solely due to transfers to the capital project fund in excess of budgeted amounts. So as you see, again, total expenditures, you beat that mark, so you controlled your expenditures. You want to, if you can back up one slide, who's ever running that slide deck, you beat them by $223,999. So you clearly contained costs relative to how things were going during the fiscal year. But the capital project fund transfers went in excess of what you had planned transferring over there. And that actually, that 291 relates to the internal control finding and the compliance finding relative to budgetary compliance. That $291,000 unfavorable variance. Next slide is your property tax collection table. And really the only thing I look at from the perspective of this is what is the collection rate. So your current collection rate for that current list year, the 2017 list year, which is the first row up on that table, was 97.9%, which it remains very consistent with where you have been at least over the last 5 years. And I think it very likely extends quite further than that. So that's a great collection rate, and it remains steady year in and year out. So it's something from the budgetary perspective that you can find great reliance on, which is a good place to be in. The next schedule is just a snapshot of your capital assets as of June 30, 2019. As you can see, the capital assets decreased by about $348,786, so almost $349,000, and it was due strictly to the fact that your depreciation outpaced what your additions were for the year. Depreciation was $1,735,332. Your total additions were almost about 1.4 million, so it just outpaced it a little bit. And that's common occurrence unless you get some major projects going on that are all coming online in a particular fiscal year, or major construction going on in a fiscal year. Next slide is your debt slide. Again, a table snapshot in time as of June 30, 19. And overall, long-term debt increased by $608,491. And that really is quite frankly solely due to an increase in the pension liability, which is the MERS plan, and an increase in your OPEB liability. So both of those are actuarial calculations that are done and provided to us and the town relative to those liabilities. MERS comes from the state, actually, the state actuaries, and your OPEB liability comes from your own actuary. The plan that you do have, the MERS plan, you really don't have control over. You're just a participant in it. The plan you do have control over in town is the school or Board of Education retirement plan, which I think you're all aware actually has a net pension asset. So it is fully funded, and we've got a slide coming up that'll provide you that information as well. So the next slide actually is that plan. I haven't provided you this slide before in the past, but I think it's a great slide to look at. It's probably more important to look at it when you're in a liability position, and you guys are not in a liability position. As I said, you're in a net asset position. But if you look at that bottom line there, the planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of the total pension liability, it's a great trend schedule that provides you information relative to where you stand in the funding of that plan. And you can see over time the buildup or depletion of the plan. Sometimes things relative to things you can control, which are basically the contribution levels that you're making, and more often things you can't control, which is market volatility and what's transpiring in the market, and then therefore the investment earnings on the assets that are invested. But great position to be in, clearly. One of probably a small handful of plans in the state of Connecticut that are fully funded. The next slide is that MERS plan, which is generating the liability that we're talking about. I've got it highlighted there. And again, all of these tables actually, the last one we just looked at and this one, come out of the audit report itself. They're considered required supplementary information, so they come right after the notes. But again, this is a trend table. And again, this MERS plan really isn't something that you have a lot of control over. What I would bring your attention to relative to this table would be where the liability is going. And again, I have it highlighted there, $1,366,000. You see the year prior from, at the end of 18, it was only $710,000. So there was some significant adjustments in the discount rate that the state imposed on that MERS plan, as well as some reallocation relative to membership. Now the other line I would bring you to is that top line, your town's proportion of the net pension liability. So that's basically of the total state liability in this plan that's allocated to the municipalities. That's your percentage of it, 0.143%, and as you see, that has gone down since 2015. Yet the liability has gone up. So clearly, in this fiscal year, that clearly had primarily to do with the fact that that discount rate was changed. I think by at least 0.5%, maybe even 0.75%. I'm not positive on that though. And then the last slide here, I think it's the last financial highlight slide, is just the OPEB liability. As I said, it increased during the year by $186,277. Now this There is no trust relative to your OPEB liability, so there are no assets to apply against the total liabilities. So in those cases, we'd refer to this as a net liability, where in fact this is the total OPEB liability. Certainly relative to magnitude of order, 2.25 million is not that significant relative to statewide. I wouldn't suggest it's not significant to you or to the town itself. But it's certainly within the realm if the town does decide at some point in time to establish a trust and begin funding a trust, it's certainly within the realm of being able to get it and keep it under control as a liability. And then the remainder of this is just what are deemed required auditor communications to those charged with governance. These are boilerplate communications that are required by Statement of Auditing Standards 114. So the AICPA dictates that we do have to communicate certain matters to you, those charged with governance. And I'm not going to read through all of these. We did issue a formal letter when the financial statements themselves were issued. But basically what they deal with is they all surround criteria that if we were having problems in these areas, it may present an indication of bias by management, meaning management is trying to manipulate the financial statements to look perhaps better than they actually are, or perhaps worse than they actually are. And in no cases in any of this in the areas we're required to report, or in any area, quite frankly, have we experienced in the current, in the 19 audit or in any audit, any indication of bias by management or any desire to present something that isn't in reality what it should be presented as. As you're all aware, by the fact that it's August, we did experience some delays, some significant delays in the completion of the audit. We did finally get through it. We did issue, and that's really the only thing that everybody's aware of, but that's the only thing in here that would be out of boilerplate relative to saying, we have nothing to report. So other than that, I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have. Or, if as I always suggest, if down the road, after you've had some time to absorb this, if you've got some questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is I think on the final slide in this slide deck, and we'll get you answers to anything that might come to light down the road.
Questions for Ron?
Aaron, this is Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned a significant deficiency on one of the programs. I wonder if you might comment a little bit more about that. I mean, that's significant.
Yeah, so that was, let me just jump back here to slide deck here. So if you can want to jump back to, I think it's going to be slide 5. Yeah, 5 of 19. So I'm assuming you're talking about the significant deficiency in the state single audit, correct? Is that
right? That's
okay.
The qualified opinion.
Okay, so what that deficiency had to do with is the early child care program. When we went to perform testing on that program, we were not able to obtain any evidential matter relative to indication of review related to support for slots used, tuition fees received, documentation of the fact that reports were reviewed, and there was no indication that any subrecipient monitoring took place. So when other entities, other organizations are performing part of the responsibilities of the grant, which is the case here, you as the primary grantee are required to monitor that other entity to ensure that they're in compliance with, in this case, the state single audit and the compliance requirements relative to that program. So, you know, what it really stemmed from, both the internal control finding and the compliance finding, is the fact that there was no evidential matter to be obtained, and we were unable to determine why that in fact was the case. If it was because of COVID, if it was because there was some poor record keeping, but nonetheless, as I said earlier in the presentation, if we can't, you know, relative to compliance work, it's very binary in nature. Either it is compliant, it is in compliance, or it's not in compliance. And when you can't test it, you can't report on it. So that's basically why those findings are presented.
Do I understand it as sort of a lack of records to review is the finding, rather than you found a real problem?
That is correct.
Okay. Wondered, here it is, August 20. We're talking about June 30th, a year ending June 30, 2019. And I know you called it out on the last slide there. That for me is a big problem. It's hard for us to react to suggestions, deficiencies that we have and so forth, if we don't get this audit for over a year from when the year ended. Again, I would ask you, could you comment a minute or two on that particular problem?
Well, clearly there were issues, I think, in the ability of the finance office and the school department to get us information that was accurate. There was a lot of back and forth relative to when we got information, we knew it was inaccurate. We're unfortunately in a position, and this has to do with Yellow Book rules, our hands are kind of tied at some points relative to what we can and can't do on behalf of management. You know, if we end up reconciling everything and getting everything from right to wrong, we're not in a position to be able to issue an opinion, because we'd be issuing an opinion on our own financial statements.
Are you sort of saying you're having to do the work as opposed to reviewing the work? Is that what I hear?
As opposed to auditing the work.
That's what, yeah, I'm sorry. No.
Yeah. So the time drag really had to do with the back and forth of us getting information from management, having questions or issues with that information, kicking it back to management, and then the turnaround time relative to that. So we know, at Bloom in our government group, once we get into your budget season, your finance director and probably your school business manager are pretty jammed up with that responsibility. And so things get a little bit tougher insofar as the ability to turn things around in quick fashion. But really it has to do with just the time that it takes to turn information around.
Thank you for those responses.
Any other questions for Ron?
I wonder, Aaron, if we might allow, if they wish, the business manager or the finance director to comment or maybe ask a question of their own. I know you've just asked the Board of Finance members, but I wonder, because this really reviews their efforts over the year, whether they should be allowed to ask a question if they feel a need.
I'm happy to open the floor to them.
Oh, and as well, the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen as well. I think, again, this is reviewing our entire town. They all might have something to say. I'm not suggesting they do, but maybe they do.
Well, and of course, the nature of the item on the agenda is auditor's report. So that doesn't necessarily restrict discussion to any one or two or three people in particular. So I'm happy to open the floor to anyone who feels that they can intelligently and thoughtfully weigh in on this.
I might have a question if that's okay, Aaron.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks for presenting today. We appreciate it. I know it was reasonably last minute. So yes, I would agree. It was definitely a challenging year to try and get this audit done for so many different reasons. And I think I don't want to, there's no way that it would be fair to pass the blame game with regards to why it didn't get done in time. The bottom line is it didn't get done in time. And obviously we're moving on. You're not going to be our auditors anymore. I would welcome any advice on how better to do this. Well, obviously the recommendations you provide with regards to your requirement as our auditors, but I would personally like some recommendation from you and your firm and the team, including Mike, as to how we can do it differently next year to ensure that we're not in the same position. You know, obviously things are so different for everybody. I know most firms are not doing face-to-face audits. That's what I'm hearing. We've gone out to RFP on our audit and we actually haven't received any bids. So we're not sure where that leaves us, to be honest, at this stage, Ron, but I know I'm sure maybe Bob would feel the same. I would welcome any recommendations or advice.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, any other comments, any other discussion?
Aaron, this is Amy St. Ange.
Go ahead, Amy.
Speak. Ron, this is Amy St. Ange. First time I get to see you face to face. It's always just been emails. Thank you for coming in and speaking with us tonight. To expound on what Orla was saying, obviously, yes, we don't have an audit firm at this point. And with COVID and from what I understand, audit firms not really doing face-to-face meetings. Is there any chance that your firm would consider staying on one more year to help us get through this one last audit? Bring it to whoever and maybe consider it.
I will certainly take it under consideration. I will bring it. I can't make that decision unilaterally. You know, I do know, and I shared this with Aaron a few weeks back, that if we were to have participated, we would be looking for, you know, I think what you would consider to be a substantial price increase. You know, I'm currently writing off anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 a year on this engagement, and I've got to answer to somebody relative to that. But I will certainly. I don't want to leave you guys in a lurch. I didn't anticipate that you wouldn't get any respondents. I believe, and Orla, you can reach out to them and verify, but I believe if you don't get anyone, and I don't know how many attempts you have to try to get someone, OPM will assign an audit firm. We're actually on that list. It's usually a rotating list, and they will assign a firm to you. That doesn't typically work out to be a great relationship because you're last in line relative to that audit firm. But nonetheless, I will take it into consideration. I will tomorrow morning chat with the director of our government industry group, along with the managing partner of the firm, but you may want to check with OPM as well.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yep.
And now I have one more question on what was identified, and I've been racking my brain trying to remember what it might have been. In your commentary or your letter, it said that we further note that the town overspent the final general fund budget for the capital projects fund transfers, and that was the 291,000 that you referenced.
Yeah.
Orla, what was that? I just can't remember.
That was the proceeds from the sale of the buses.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that was eventually used to balance the budget.
okay.
I have experience with the two other auditing firms from my previous towns my previous town that I work with. And I could forward you their information.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, they're still doing audits.
Great.
Any other questions, comments, discussion on this topic at this time?
I guess I just want to highlight in the area because of the discussion on early childhood. Normally, it's been my experience that when we've done grant audits, they're done in October, November, as opposed to June, May and June of the next year. But the other point of that is normally school's in session and records are accessible in other buildings, but they weren't accessible during the COVID closing when we've been closed in March. And then I got identified about the state audit somewhere around Memorial Day. So we weren't going to open up before the end of June either. And then it got to the point where the people who had the records wasn't available. So we made a change. All the records, as with every other grant, are now centrally located and centrally kept in my office, in the finance office, as opposed to what it was before. But I guess all those records are available. They are in hand at this point. They would have been in hand if it was the year that we were open. But again, I've been a business manager for 4 years, and I've never seen an audit take place at getting a management report and getting the auditor's report in August of the fiscal year, the following fiscal year. I'm used to getting it at the latest. The latest I've ever seen before has been March. While you're still 1 year away. We're talking about a fiscal year that's 2 years ago at this point. So I guess that was incredibly frustrating to me. But I think that that's about all I'm going to say as far as I just wanted to talk about that one audit, and then I just wanted to throw in that I know two other auditing firms that do municipal and Board of Education audits. One's big and one's boutique.
Anything else at this time? Questions, comments, discussion on this topic at this time? All right, hearing none. Ron, thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks
Have
for
a
your
good
time, Ron.
Thank you. So I put Ron as item 2 on the agenda so that we could get, like I said, we could get to this conversation immediately and then he could log off. So now we kind of take it from the top the way we usually do. We move on to item 3, which is a review and approval of minutes from June 18, 2020. That was a regular meeting. The reason that the June minutes are the most recent is because we didn't have a July meeting, as you recall. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the June 18th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Rhonda's got the motion. Is there a second? Anyone care to second?
I'll second that.
Jim's got the second. Any changes to these minutes? All right, hearing none, All in favor of accepting these minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone oppose? Anyone abstain? All right, I'll take that as a unanimous, because I know that all 6 of us are on the call now. So that's 6-0. So then we move on to correspondence. That's item 4. POCD update memo from the town planner. Branding Implementation Committee. Fire Advisory Committee collaborative discussion, August 27. Emailed budget process participation survey. Does everyone recall receiving and or seeing those items? I do.
I do remember the Fire Advisory Committee, but I don't recall the other ones. Maybe I just missed them.
I'll tell you what, I did get an email from this professor at Southern Connecticut State University. I don't know if it went, I don't recall if it was something like one of those deals where it was sent to her and then a bunch of BCCs. So, or if it was, I think it was sent to me and a whole bunch of other people, but I don't know if she just picked chairs of boards of finance. So I'll forward it to you guys. I responded, I filled it out. It was like a few questions. They were just doing research about boards of finance in Connecticut in the COVID-19 world. Is there anything else that we got in the last couple of months? Because I know we didn't meet in July. Anything else we got in the last couple of months that I'm overlooking or is not recorded here or that we should record?
Not that I know of.
Not that I know of either, but I would recommend, if Steve did not receive the Branding Implementation Committee email, that somebody forward it to him, because it goes over all the progress that they've made over the last like 5 years. So it was really beneficial to see.
Dottie, maybe if you're able to help us locate that, that would be great. Oh, Dottie's giving me the thumbs up. Okay. Thank you, Dottie. If you can help us locate that one, that'd be great. All right, so nothing else as far as correspondence, nothing else to add? All right, we'll move on to citizens' comments. Any citizen have a comment at this time? Any citizen have a comment at this time?
Aaron, Ken Bosley.
Yep, go ahead, Ken, and just for the record, could you state your address, please?
Yeah, 21 Walker Drive, and I am on the Board of Selectmen as well, just so everybody is aware. I did see on your agenda tonight a request for HVAC with Teague. Unaware of what the situation is with that. I do see, I can only anticipate it's probably one of the air exchangers, again, that's probably given Teague an issue, which I think the building's 7 to 8 years old now. No, it's probably older than that. But we've been having those type of situations over the last few years with the equipment failing. So I do look forward tonight to see, what the issue is, because the Board of Selectmen hasn't reviewed it yet. Obviously, with the Teague building, it is, we do own the building. They do cover the first $500 as a deductible, and the town does always pick up the rest. So that's basically the comment. I do look forward to hearing, I see Mr. Rice is on, he'll probably explain, what the deficiency is over at Teague. But like I said, this is the first that the board has heard of it. But, in the past, we've always supported, doing any repairs at Teague because it is a town building and they do such a fantastic job. That's it.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments at this time? Any other citizens' comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to Selectmen's update. That's First Selectman Amy St. Ange. And Amy, you there? There you are.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, where to begin? After missing a month, there's a lot of stuff going on. To begin with, the rehabilitation area, which will provide some tax relief to our developer of the mill project, was adopted on our August 4th Board of Selectmen meeting. We utilized the executive order that allowed us to pass this without an actual town meeting. Felt that there was a sense of urgency and we weren't prepared at this point to have a town meeting. So the board unanimously agreed to move forward with it. What this resolution provides is a 7-year fixed assessment while the property is being constructed or reconstructed, and then up to 11 years of deferred increased assessments. This will apply to a specific area that's been designated by planning and zoning. It does only apply to multifamily housing units, and there's certain criteria that has to be met in order to qualify for the fixed assessment and the deferred assessment. So that's that. In regard to town meetings, we are working to put together, because we have several issues that have to come before town meeting, and we don't want to utilize the executive order again for these issues. We're working on a hybrid plan. Melinda has kindly loaned me her IT director, and we're working on a hybrid plan that will incorporate a live meeting, Zoom, and live streaming with the equipment that we now have. So I'm hoping to be able to have a town meeting by mid-October would be what I would be shooting for. Let's see, summer concerts this year have been a success with the rec department. There's poor Leslie, she's been really frustrated, so much that she usually does and wants to do, had to rethink things. So this year's summer concerts are employing the trailer that we utilize for Community Day. And the DPW department graciously moves it to Riverside Park. And the concerts are taking place on the ball field in the wide open field space. And it's something that we think we don't want to abandon. We'd like to continue doing them in the field because people can bring blankets, they can bring, you know, snacks and things like that. So when I talked to Leslie the other day, we discussed the possibility of working on some donations and possibly constructing a permanent structure that would face the field to some degree. That all those details have to be worked out, but we'd like to continue having the concerts in the ball field. The other day we hired our animal control officer. So the animal control program is moving forward. We've got the electric and the water back up and running. Next week, it's Janice Smith, that's her name, our new ACO. And she's going to be providing me with a list of items that are necessary and things we need to get done. We are going to employ some volunteers to help out with getting the building back to par, and looking forward to that program being back at home again. I have a report from Rich. He is enjoying some respite time away, so he can't be with us tonight. But I do have a report from projects that he's working on that I'd like to share with the board tonight. He tells us, last Wednesday, we ground up Colonial Ave and approximately 300 feet of Babula Road near Sandam Road. We raised the grade on Colonial Ave to fix a drainage issue, followed by paving it the other day. 2 days ago, we paved it. We replaced an improperly installed culvert pipe on Babula Road, and they graded it, reshaped it, and they paved that road today. We have some prep work to do next week on Liberty Lane and the end of Porter Plain Road, where there was some drainage issues. And that's going to get ground up next Friday, and they'll have about a week or so to complete the work on that project before the grinder comes back to Sunset Hill Road. And this will bring us into October before all scheduled work is complete. We are handling most of the paving ourselves with the exception of Sunset Hill Road. And in between road work, they still have some storm cleanup. They have some issues and things that they need to do within the parks. They have some mowing, the mowing of the parks and the cemeteries. And they still have several bridge repairs that were brought to our attention. One in particular on Buckley Hill Road, which has basically we've been told that it's in dire need of repair, and Rich has since put up no through truck traffic signs, because really the bridge is not capable of handling the loads. And if you remember from budget season, that was something that I brought up, that bridges were going to be an issue, and it's come to fruition. So we have been told that there's a lot of the work that we can do ourselves, so that's a bonus. And Rich is going to be getting on that promptly as well. He's hoping to complete all this work by November 1st. At that time, they'll get prepped for winter work and plow season. Additionally, Connecticut Water is working on the water lines on Main Street currently. So in lieu of Connecticut Water milling and paving half the road, Rich is working with them to actually receive a check. So instead of them milling and paving half the road, because Rich said that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the entire length of Main Street, and he doesn't want a fix that's going to have to be ground up again anyways. He's negotiating with Connecticut Water for them just to pay us for the work they would have done. What he wants the Board of Finance to consider is that when we do receive this check, and he'll update us on the amount that we're anticipating once he sits down with Connecticut Water, when we receive the check, he would like it to go to the roads account, or to set up a separate account so that it will go towards paving Main Street in the future. That was the request he made to me today for the Board of Finance to consider. And the last thing that I have to discuss that I wanted to bring to the board's attention was a memorandum of agreement that was signed today with the union, the United Public Service Employees Union. As you remember from budget season, we were negotiating an extension of the contract. And in my eyes, it was no raises. After we adopted the budget at the end of June, we received information from our attorney that the union was looking for an increase in wage. Kind of threw me for a loop. But after sitting down with Rich and Orla and Marie, and also talking with the attorneys, we did agree to a 2% general wage increase for the union members only. Rich and I have been creative. We found Rich is giving up his summer help because he wasn't able to find anybody to work anyways. And then we found some pockets elsewhere of money that we would be able to forego. And in total, it was about just under $21,000 that it was going to cost the town. So we made allowances where we could as a good faith gesture, because if we were extending the contract, it would mean that the current contract would continue on, and the current contract stated a 2% raise. Additionally, what we agreed to was that negotiations would commence no later than November 15th, so that by budget season next year, we would, in all hopes, have a final contract in place for the following year. And that's my report.
Questions for the first selectman? Any questions, anyone? Questions?
Aaron, it's Rob Wurge. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
I did have a question. Just interested, first up, great update and report, Amy, so thank you for that. When you talked about the bridges, that did come up through the budgeting cycle, and there wasn't a real solid plan other than, a general viewpoint that the bridges were in need of repair, and no doubt that they are. But I think where we landed on that was we were going to spend some money on a bridge assessment. And is that underway? So we'll cycle back through next year. We'll have a little bit of hard data around the severity of the issue, and maybe even a skeleton of a plan on which bridges we go after first, and what the costs are to get those bridges where they need to be.
Rob, I think either I'm misunderstanding, but I thought that we only we had taken 20,000 for a study on the shed, on the salt shed. I thought everything was taken out for the bridges.
Okay,
And
let's
yes,
look
you're
back. I thought we talked about an assessment being done so that we could then get to a point where we could allocate funds if they were needed.
Right. Oh, possibly at one point. DOT came out, and Rich had been anticipating it from past studies, and they had come out and they've actually done the assessment, and we are going to have the assessment in hand with recommendations. At this point, it looks like a good majority of the work can be done by our Public Works Department, but there are a couple issues where we won't be able to actually do the work. But that'll come out in the assessment that's going to be coming from DOT.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the first selectman? Questions, anyone? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to school district update. Superintendent of Schools, Melinda Smith.
Well, hello, everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed the summer. It's certainly been quite a challenging summer for the school department. I'm hoping somebody can let me have a screen share because there is a little bit about our reentry plan I do want to review with the Board of Finance. But just to give you an update, enrollment is increasing in Thompson Public Schools. We have about 1,000 students currently registered as of today and 7 more applications to be processed. We inherited 18 students from St. Joe's. And so right now we're at about 1,007 students. We closed the school year out with 975 students. So we are continuing to enroll, even though we've had some students withdraw for homeschool, a small amount, about 8 students. We're moving into our reopening phase. Thompson Public Schools is going to be opening in a full model. And I just want to go through so the Board of Finance has an understanding of the process that the school department has had to go through to reopen schools. Because not that I want to be Debbie Downer, but I know that Kathleen Herbert forewarned us last spring that even though we experienced significant budget reductions and didn't cover our costs, that COVID and reopening schools would have a significant impact on our budget, and it is. And so I just want to explain to everyone why that is, so that when, if we don't get reimbursed from the state for all of our expenses, why we end up in some sort of a compromised position with our budget. So I'm hoping that somebody can give me security so I can share my screen.
Melinda, this is Amy St. Ange. You should be able to share your screen. I have it open to all participants.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna bring everybody back, and I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna try to get us back to the beginning of this presentation. This is a presentation that I made to the Board of Education about our reentry plan. The State Department of Education directed all superintendents to submit a reopening plan by the end of July, and we had to submit that plan on July 24th. And so before we went ahead and submitted that plan, we made a presentation to the Board of Education. So there's a few highlights in this plan that I want to go over with the members of the Board of Finance so they understand what's been happening. Soon after we closed on March 13th, we started to organize our core team of directors at central office and started to make plans about reopening school. Little did we know at that time that we were going to be closed for the school year. And we did start to try to get orders of PPE equipment and things that we thought we would need, disinfectant and those kinds of things, purchased so that we would have an inventory on site. Obviously, at that time, everybody was looking for those materials, and many of those items were back ordered or simply never came in. And so we had to continue searching for masks and gloves and face shields and desk shields and all sorts of equipment that was very competitive in the marketplace. And so that core team worked together until we knew that in June, we were going to be directed to put a complete comprehensive plan. And the CSDE issued Adapt, Advance, Achieve, Connecticut's Plan to Learn and Grow. And we had to submit our plan, and that came out to us on June 29th. And we had to submit our plan by July 24th. So we expanded our core group that was working on reopening to a larger stakeholder group. It included parents, it included people from the community, as well as administrators, faculty, staff, union representatives, because there's a lot of moving pieces to reopening schools. So you can see that we had a good cross-section of people involved in the reopening plan. In the plan, there are things that are requirements, which means that the Department of Education and the Governor's Office are requiring us to implement. And then there are things in there that are called guidance. Guidance means that they highly suggest, they can't mandate. However, it's guidance that we need to pay attention to as we reopen school. One of the things, not that I want to dwell on this, but face masks are required in the school. Not only are face masks required for people to wear them, the school department is required to provide them for all faculty and for students. We're hoping that our teachers and our parents send their students, their children to school with face masks. However, we had to create an inventory of face masks to have on site. And so that's one of those things that is simply a requirement. We were also required to plan for 3 reopening models. One that invited all students to come to school on site. A second where we would only bring in 50% of our students. And then a third model, which is what we did in March when we closed down entirely. After a lot of review, we have decided to open school on Monday, August 31st in a full school model, which means we have invited all 1,000 students to come back to school in Thompson Public Schools. However, parents are given the option of having their child remain home for a distant learning program. As of today, we have about 18% of our student population staying home for distant learning, and the remaining 82% of our parents are opting to send their children to school on site. One of the reasons that we went toward a full model on site right now, even though some surrounding communities are going in a hybrid model, which brings less kids on campus, is because right now the community spread of COVID is very low. And we are very concerned that we need to get our students into school, meet their teachers, get their curriculum resources, get their devices. And then if we have to close down or go to a hybrid model, at least everyone had a firm footing on the school year. So that's where we're at as of today. Things are changing rapidly. Almost every day something changes and we get new guidance. There are 7 addendums to the Adapt, Advance, and Achieve plan that CSDE put out. And so every time we get a new guidance or a new addendum, there's new information that we have to comply with. So this just basically explains our learning programs, and what the hybrid program would be is that students came in 2 days a week and they distant learn from home 3 days a week. We're not there yet. That's another level that we can shift down to if needed. We also have to make accommodations for students with special needs depending on what program their parents have chosen. So if a child is at home and a parent has distant learn, is requesting distant learning, then we also have to make accommodations so that that child receives special education services virtually. If we shift to a hybrid model, we are going to look at some of our more significant students, students that have special needs, coming in 4 days rather than 2. I'm proud to say that Thompson Public Schools right now is a one-to-one district. That means that every student for next year will have their own device. That's preschool through grade 12. That is thanks to the efforts of our Board of Education and our state reps, in particular May Flexer, who has been lobbying hard to ensure that we had received Alliance money last year. We were able to amend that grant. School was closed during that time, and we were able to amend that grant and provide laptops for our elementary school. We didn't have laptops across the board, and we scrambled to give families at least one laptop. But if a family had multiple children, that became a hardship because all 3 children needed to be on the same device. We also provided families with hotspots if they didn't have internet access. So starting next Monday, we will be distributing all of the Chromebooks and laptop devices that we have to our students. We were also granted another grant because we are an Alliance district and the high school students are all receiving new Chromebooks or new laptops, and the older devices are being pushed down into the elementary grades. So that's how we achieved a one-on-one, but it was not taxpayer dollars. It was all grant funded that we were able to provide that technology. And I'm breathing a sigh of relief. I know many other districts are not in that same position, but thank goodness that we are right now. And so classrooms are going to be set up where teachers are going to be live streaming from the classroom. They will have cameras, document cameras, and speakers so that they can invite their children who are home into the classroom. Those lessons will be recorded and posted so that if a family can't access the lessons during the course of the school day, they can access them later. On Monday, our teachers return to the campus for professional development for the week. They will primarily be working on safety and security. They'll be working on social emotional health and then putting their distant learning program together. They're walking into classrooms that look very different. And I can tell you that Bill Birch and the custodial team of Thompson Public Schools are to be highly commended for the work that they have done this summer, and really oppressive heat, by the way. We have had to create social distance plan, and we had to create cohort groups, which meant that I had to take classrooms and split them in half to create smaller groupings of students. In some cases, we got creative with the staff that we had on site, but unfortunately, we don't have enough staff to man all the cohorts that we need. And so therefore, there's a funding impact right there, because we need to hire substitute teachers to fill those cohorts. We've been creative. We have put students, larger groups of students, in cafeterias. We've had to buy partitions, portable partitions, to take the cafeterias and make them into classrooms. But if you can see that at Mary Fisher, a classroom would look like this picture. The desks are 6 feet apart. Any non-essential furniture in the classrooms have been removed and stored. And so it looks like when I went to school, in a Catholic school, all the desks in rows and everybody's facing forward. But that is all for safety purposes. And the same thing at the middle and high school level. At the high school level, we are not able to cohort because of students scheduling. However, through creative work that Principal Perret has done, she's been able to assign classrooms to areas that they can spread out, like the auditorium, the stage, and the library. However, once again, we have had to increase staffing. The other issue is that we do have staff requesting leave of absences. And when they request those leaves, dependent upon what their circumstances are, we are obligated to allow them to access their accrued time for whatever limited amount of time and pay that teacher. And on the other flip side, we have to pay for the substitute who's covering that class. So you can see where the financial challenges have been. And similarly at the high school, like I just said, we do have a couple of classes that are running 20 to 21 students, and they're being shifted to open areas. As far as transportation, there's been no guidance or no limit on how many students ride on the buses. We have been trying to balance our bus runs out. And so at this point, our students are coming in on a low transmission risk. Everyone must wear a mask on the bus. We must supply the buses with extra masks in case students come to the bus stop and have forgotten their masks. So we're in the process of getting that out. We've reworked some of the bus routes to minimize the amount of children on the bus. And in between tiers, the buses are being disinfected every day. Food service will be served in classrooms, both breakfast and lunch, which has an impact on food service staffing because now we're delivering food to classrooms because the cafeteria at the elementary and the middle school are now classrooms. And we will have to provide lunch for students who are distant learning at home. Parents may come and pick up lunch for their children. And then if we do shift to a hybrid model, we are going to have to go back to some drop-off sites. And if we go truly remote, we'll have to go back to those 4 sites, Quinnebog Fire Station, East Thompson Fire Station, Teague, and the library. And it's at this time I need to thank Amy St. Ange and her team over at Town Hall, who have been so gracious to let us use their vehicles so that we can transport meals. And also the rec department, who has been working diligently to provide on-site childcare dependent upon the variety of programming we might have to shift into. And Leslie right now is trying to look for childcare on site for our teachers because some of them may not be able to come to work if their school district that their children goes to is in a hybrid model. So there's just so many interlocking pieces to opening school on the 31st. As far as operations, we talked about PPE equipment. We've had to have plexiglass installed in all the school offices. We've had to have signage hung all over the campus. I think more than, I don't know, well over 100 signs for each hand washing, social distancing, mask wearing are all over the campus. Our HVAC system has had to be cleaned and serviced, and Bill Birch has been doing a lot of that himself. Our water system has to be flushed. We have to close our bubblers. And then we have to adhere to standard cleaning procedures being developed and follow CDC guidelines. We have to increase daytime and custodial staff, so we've transferred someone from nights. However, we still need additional help during the day, and we're still looking for substitute custodians to help us out with that. Students are going to have mask breaks, so they will have to be outdoors. So we've had to order tents so that they can go outdoors even on drizzly days, because wearing a mask for that length of time is going to require kids to take a break. So that's been happening. We've had our school nurse working all summer because there's been so many moving pieces. She's had to stay on top of all the changes with health. She is our liaison to the state in regards to us being in compliance with our CDC guidelines. And we are in constant communication with the Northeast Department of Health. And if we have a COVID case, there is a protocol that we follow, and in conjunction with consulting with our local health department. And we've had a pretty robust communication plan. Parents know what's going on. We've used our typical communication practices, which we've always used. But in addition, we've held 6 parent forums for families to ask questions. And then we also have an email address that people can ask questions about reopening. But the bottom line is reopening is a complex task, and reopening is an expensive procedure. There's just no way around it. And so I don't know how we're going to end the school year, but I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I do want you to know that we're working hard and we're trying to do the best we can by using in-house staff, but the impact to open schools is going to be significant. And so that is just about my update. It's been a very long journey since March 13th. And I can't thank the faculty, staff, and the community for supporting Thompson Public Schools while we've been going through all these changes.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent?
This is Jim Bellavance. I have a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
First of all, Melinda, great job. Great job.
Thanks.
How many substitute teachers are you contemplating at this point in time that we're going to need?
So, you know, Jim, here's my my anxiety. Every day I turn on my computer and I'm either getting a resignation, a retirement, or somebody asking for a leave. And so it's like a moving target that I can't get a hold of. As of the close of today, I think we have 6 additional substitutes. I am waiting for the governor's office to release what kind of allocation Thompson's going to get. We had to put in a survey on July 17th, and the cost of reopening school at that time was $776,000, and that's what we submitted in our survey. I don't know if we're going to get that kind of money in return, but that's what we told the state we would need to appropriately open up school. I'm just waiting to hear what we're going to actually get.
Are you anticipating that I know you said you have 6 at this point in time.
Yeah.
How many are you thinking you might actually really need to get? I mean,
Probably 10. That's what I'm looking at now. And here's the other fly in the ointment. People aren't coming to just day-to-day sub. They want permanent work. They want work for the year. And so hiring people that are either long-term subs or that they have good assurance that they're going to have some work is the only way I'm getting classrooms covered. Because other than that, no one really wants to do day-to-day because they don't want to go district to district because of fear of getting sick. So that's also been another challenge. But so far as of the close of today, I think I have everything covered. The problem is if we quarantine a classroom and teachers have to be quarantined, that's going to pose another set of issues dependent upon, you know, if a UA teacher, an art teacher who's visited every classroom, but one classroom has to shut down, she'll have to stay home. And then I'll need to get a sub for her. And there's really no pool of subs. That's the other dilemma I think every superintendent is facing. So.
janitorial wise, what are you looking at there for substitutes?
So we were always understaffed janitorial wise. When I first started in Thompson, we had 1.5 daytime custodians for that huge campus. We increased that to 2, but technically there should be a custodian in every building. So what we did was we took someone off the night shift and shifted them to days, but there's a lot of additional disinfecting that has to happen, like in between the preschool program, the morning program and the afternoon program. And then of course, cleaning up after the breakfast and lunch and getting rid of all that debris, and then wiping down the outside equipment. We're hoping to get a couple of more subs. Bill Birch has not been able to secure a couple of custodial subs, even though you might have seen it in the shopper's guide that we've been looking. Right now, we don't have that. We've been leaning on, I hate to say it, some of our security folks have stepped up and have kind of pitched in when we needed them to help out with some custodial work. So we are going to open on the 31st with a custodian in every building, but technically we could use another couple of subs during the day to keep up with that constant disinfecting and cleaning of the touch surfaces.
Well, good job. Thank you very much for your information.
Any other questions for the superintendent?
I'd just like to make a comment. I just want to say great job, Melinda, and I want to say thank you to all the teachers, faculty, and staff that are going back to work. I know there's a lot of talk with teachers right now, so I just want to express my gratitude to you and them for stepping up to the plate and opening full-time. I think that's great. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and really, it really is. those employees that work for Thompson Public Schools have gone above and beyond. I can't be more grateful to all of them.
Any other questions for the superintendent? Thank you so much for an outstanding presentation, and thanks to you and your entire team, your entire staff for the work that you're doing. It is crucial, and I appreciate it.
Yep, and we're looking forward to being back in school, that's for sure.
All right, if there's no further questions, then we'll move on to financial report, Finance Director Ola McKiernan Raftery.
Thank you, Aaron. I just want to reiterate what everybody else has said. Kudos to Melinda and all her staff. What a challenging year. I see it from all the different schools that people are involved in, and did we ever foresee this was ever going to happen? But you guys are doing great. So continue doing what you're doing, because you're doing an amazing job. Okay, so I did distribute some reports to you, to the board members this week. You got the audit reports, the financial statements, including the audit report, the letters, and also the single state audit and the federal state audit. I also distributed the budget book to you guys. I wasn't sure when we were going to meet again, so I just said, let's start getting everything out to you guys. And half of you got the annual report. Dottie has been wonderful. She's been copying our copies for us this week. If you did not get an annual report, it will be in the mail to you tomorrow. Or I may drop it off. It just depends how my day is going tomorrow. So if you have any questions about any of the reports that I submitted, feel free to email me, call me at the office. You guys probably all have my cell phone. You know how to track me down. So what I did distribute with regards to periodic reports is our draft report through the end of June. Now, as you know, it's a moving target. Bob and I are both active trying to get as much as our year end done as best we can. Bob has his own deadline at the end of August. We're pushing on the town side. We'll probably push into September. So we will continue to keep you monitored on how things are going with regards to how our books look at the end of June 2020. But we can take a couple of minutes just to go through what I distributed. And I am going to share the screen so I can show you the report that, just bear with me a second. Okay, I'm having trouble trying to share it, so I guess I'm not sharing it, sorry. So all of you have a copy of it in front of you. I emailed it to you earlier in the week. So just so we have an idea of where we stand at the end of June, we collected 17.128 million in property taxes. If we look at a breakdown, current taxes were higher by $160,000 than our budget, than prior year. And our prior year tax collections were also a little bit higher by about 5,000. Interest and liens and motor vehicle supplements were a little bit less. On the state grants, during the month of June, we did receive our federal pilot of approximately $5,000 and the third part of the Pequot grant payment of $12,000. On the local revenue side, our total is $890 and we're $66,000 lower than prior year. If we just take a flick through and we can take a look at some of the highlights that I have, I did want to point out the building office has been so busy. I wasn't even sure whether we were going to make budget, but we exceeded budget. So that'll tell you how busy things have been in the building office. Conveyance tax, very close to budget. Some of the other ones, we were over 100% on town clerk's fees. And there was a couple of big ones there, but I did want to specifically highlight the building fees because that's a substantial amount of that 890,000. So transfer station permits came in a little bit less than budget. So we were a little bit less than that, but we were close to where we were the previous year. So that was pretty much on expenses. The other line item, that's it, I'm pretty much on revenue. On the expenses side of things, we're 6.972 million. As I say, we're continuing to crank through purchase orders and reviewing any encumbered purchase orders that we did do at the end of June to determine as to whether they're really needed, because we really want to get these books right. Obviously, everybody knows 21 is going to be a very tight year for the entire town. All entities of the town are struggling. So whatever money we can get back to the fund balance at the end of 20, we are doing everything we can to do that. So it does require reviewing every PO that we have in the system, and also reviewing as to whether, whether we need to accrue bills or whether we can choose to not accrue those bills at the end of June. I'm going to take a quick look at the expenses side of things. A couple of our line items will require budget transfers. Some of the significant ones that are over budget within the departments. I know transfer station is over budget by $29,000. I did have a conversation with Rich this week about that, and this is primarily due to a substantial increase in tipping fees. When COVID hit, a lot of the facilities were closed. So he was scrambling to try and find other facilities to bring our waste. So as a result, it is substantially higher. Taking a look at some of the other line items, I'm pointing out the ones where we specifically are over budget. Our town council is over budget. It was a very active year. We also have to allow for some funds in this current year that were to be expended in this current year with regards to union negotiations, because the funds that we had put in place last year, we moved forward to next year. And then some of the other line items, let me see. Yeah, that's pretty much it where we are over budget. But as I say, we're continuing to crank through those numbers. Any questions so far with regards to income and expenditures? I'll just take a quick look at where we are on money-wise and the balance.
Well, this is Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
Notice one of the, Aaron's all right if I ask a question. Wanted to ask if we're paying a little extra attention to the cutoffs. I noticed there was a comment made by the auditors in the report about putting things in the appropriate year, things that were in FY18 ended up in FY19. I want to make sure that we, sort of keep good track of it this year, so our cutoffs are good, they're clean. Are you implementing any changes, I guess, to make sure we don't have that error again?
Good question, Steve. I can't. The audit for fiscal 19 was really challenging, but yes, we are going to do it. We're actually doing that in more detail than we've ever done before, because of the fact that we have funds that we're going to be so tight in 21. So anything that is genuine 20 is going into 20. We'll be continuing to accrue and review every purchase order probably until the middle of September. So yes, it's a good question, and we will be paying more attention to detail on that.
Thank you.
So I just flick on to the balance sheet. So our cash has decreased by 3 million during the month of June, and compared to last year, our cash is lower by 1.289 million. So that's pretty much it. There's no changes to surplus. We had our additional appropriations during the fiscal year 20. But pretty much where we stand on surplus right now at the end of 20 is to be determined. As you see on the report that I filed to you, we are showing a surplus on the expenditure of 639,000. That's not going to end up being the case because our overall revenue is less. So, but it is a moving target, and we'll continue to keep you updated on the expenditure side of things. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so that's where
Rob Wurge. Rob Wurge, I have a question, Orla, and it kind of relates back to the audit as well. There was some commentary around the allowance for tax receivables or uncollected taxes. I guess I'd call it bad debt. And there was a comment around that also being an issue in cumulative years. Is that material, and will that negatively or positively impact us? I know our receivable rate is very, very high. As noted, it was like 97-point-something%. But with years of not reconciling it correctly, is that going to have a negative impact on us in terms of a catch-up amount?
I don't think so. no, I don't see it. And in relation to
Can we,
how,
can we find out for
oh,
sure?
absolutely.
Because for him to note it on the first page, I would think it was, well, maybe it's not material, but it's noted on the first page of the write-up, so it might be worth at least trying to understand what the impact of that is.
Sure. So just in relation to how that transaction transpires every year, we usually hang out until the end of August before we take a look and see what our receivables are, because one of the moving targets with regards to our receivables at the end of the year is always what we collect in the first 60 days. We call it the 60 days receivables. So by the end of August, there's reasonably a substantial amount of receivables that have come in, and that's typically treated for GAAP purposes as the prior year receivables. It's usually an adjustment that's made on behalf of me, and then when the auditors come in and do their review of the taxation collections and the receivables, they make their necessary adjustment. I was surprised to see that comment, because I did bring it to the attention of the auditor at the beginning of the year, because remember, the auditors came in very late in the year. They didn't come in until the end of October. We had requested they come in after Labor Day, but for scheduling purposes and assigning the right people, it didn't happen until the end of October. And if we go on to if we go on to my one of the comments I have in regards to the audit is, there's no way we were going to be able to file by December by them not starting until the third week in October. We were already behind the 8 ball. So, but in relation to the receivables, I was surprised to see that comment, and I have reached out to the audit manager and I asked him for a specific breakdown of where we start at the beginning of fiscal 20. So I know where I need to start with, so I can ensure that it's recorded correctly. So I hope that answers your question, Rob, but yes, I did notice that. Yeah.
It does. I just remind you that I think it was Steve that asked the question around what we do at the end of the year with the reserve that we have for uncollected taxes. And I recall the answer was we take it in that year and then we carry forward the following year. So I think you said you don't think, and that's good, but I think we should just be sure that there's nothing here that's going to come back and bite us later.
Reasonable question. Thank you. I will.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments, discussion on the finance director's report?
Aaron, I do have some other numbers to report that I didn't share with you because we're so at the beginning of the fiscal year, but I have a couple of numbers that I did want to share with you in regards to fiscal 21. First of all, we did get some, our first round of town road aid paving funds. Typically, well, we're grateful to be getting it so early this year. We received 126,000 at the beginning of August. So that's good news. So it means that Rich has some extra funds to work with on a more immediate basis. So I don't see Rainey on the call. So I did want to report where he stands on his collections through the end of the first month of the fiscal year. We have collected 6.49 in tax collections through the end of July. I can't report on August yet, I'll be honest with you. It's too early in the month, and things have been busy, so I haven't actually checked in with him to see where we stand with regards to the first month of fiscal 21. But that'll just give you an idea of where we stand with regards to the collections. Now, on the expenditure side of things, we have spent 1.4 million already. So that'll give you an idea of where, and that's typical that during the month of July. Once we pass a budget, there's a lot of money that is appropriated that is paid out as one single amount. And we try to do as much of that as we can during the months of July and August. So there's a lot of that moving targets, and especially we'll see more of that disappearing during the month of July. Sorry, during the month of August when we come to report on our reports at the end of August. So I just wanted to bring those to your attention. Let me just see, is there anything else that's going on? Yeah, just in relation to the audit, it was, I have to say, in the 5 years I've been here, this was the most challenging audit from the very beginning. I think I had met Ron at, I've known Ron for years now because he's been working on our audit. I met Ron at a meeting at the beginning of February, and we chatted, and he, I mentioned to him that we were knee deep in budget season, and that Bob was in the final stages of presenting to the Board of Ed, and our audit wasn't complete. And he was aware of it. He had spoken to Mike Popham, who's our audit manager, certainly in the previous few days. And, you know, we both agreed that the goal was to try and get this done. And when I left that meeting at the end of February, I really felt that if we didn't get it done within that week, we were going to get it done by the end of February. And then it didn't happen. And COVID was the start of it, but it just became more of a challenge each month, because literally we were talking about month to month and trying to get it completed. Just when I felt that we had prepared as much as we needed to do to provide on the town side, and I know Bob felt on his side too, all of a sudden they would come back with additional questions. And I hadn't seen that in previous years. So I didn't know whether they had already made that decision that they were planning not to bid when we issued the RFP regardless. And maybe they were just taking the extra time to cross every T and dot every I. I can't speak for them. I'm just saying maybe that was the case, but it just seemed that they went back over some of the funds going back to 2015 that we hadn't even discussed in 3 or 4 fiscal years. So again, it's not about playing a blame game. It's just about the nature of what happened. There was so many different things that resulted in our audit being filed so late. But I really felt that as we got to the end of every month, we were there. We were going to file, and then all of a sudden it was additional questions. So it was a little bit frustrating. I've worked with the audit manager, Mike, since I started here, and you know, we always got into a groove, but I felt it was harder to get into a groove this year for so many different reasons, and that's why I suggested to Ron to reach out and just for my personal development, and also in relation to the municipality as a whole, what could we have done differently in their recommendation outside the requirements of the audit, you know, one professional to another professional. So I look forward to see if I ever receive any information from them, but I'm just so glad it's over. And you know, it's so late, and it's just crazy that we're having this conversation in August of the following fiscal year. But I think we got to move on. We got to move on and get this year done and get this year filed.
This is Steve.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I kind of wish you'd made those comments when Ron was actually in the meeting, because you're sort of blaming him a little bit, and I think it'd be appropriate if you made him had the opportunity when he was at our meeting.
Well, I'm not blaming Ron. I hope you don't think I'm not blaming Ron at all. No, I don't think it was him specific. I don't think it was his staff specific. I think it was a combination of so many different things. And certainly in my conversations with Mike, I don't feel that they're putting the blame on Bob and I. I think they're putting the blame on everything that was going on. At least I don't know how Bob feels about that, but that's the impression that I got in my conversations with him. Bob, it sounds like you want to mention something? No, okay. You know, it was definitely,
Because it won't be pleasant, so no,
Okay.
thank you.
it was definitely a challenge. You know, we started the year, the reason why we agreed to have it, and here's the thing, I'm happy to share this information with Ron. I certainly shared it with Mike. But when we started, when Mike asked me, would we be comfortable with the 3rd week in October, I almost had a canary, and I said, no way, that's way too late. He says, well, the staff that did your audit the previous year will not be available till that week. So we either start with a brand new staff, or we hold off and we do it at the end of October and do everything we possibly can to file. So I agreed. We went ahead with it. And then the 2 individuals that we worked very closely with on the fiscal 18 budget, one of them got a promotion and left. So we were left with the more junior member, and I'm not questioning any of her credibility because she was great at what she does, but she had a more junior staff working. And so already there was challenges. And I think when Mike scheduled that for the 3rd week of October, he didn't know what was going to happen with that other individual who seemed to have a lot of experience in what was going on in the town of Thompson.
I think the most frustrating thing for me was that I called them at the end of December. I called Mike at the end of December because you have to make changes in our big report that's due September 1st. Then you get the findings report from the state, and you have to make changes based on that, and that's when they come in. When I asked at the end of December, do you have everything you need from me? Am I done? Yep. And then in January, you'd get an email saying, can you send us this, this, and this? Okay. I'd send it, and I would send it almost immediately. And so you got everything you need? Yep. Then February, I got some other questions. I thought you had everything you needed. Oh, well, this is just something that just popped up. Okay. And then nothing until May. And, you know, we ran a financial budget from home that we paid over, you know, 2,500 paychecks during that course of time. We paid over 1,000 vendors during that period of time working from home. You know, my accounts receivable people went in 1 day a week for 3 hours, and my payroll person went in 1 day a week. I went 1 day every 2 weeks, and I worked from here. And then I went in once to pick up copies of tuition checks that they wanted to see, that I had the whole fiscal years of tuition checks from fiscal year 2019. And then Memorial Day came around, and we were all done, right? Well, we're gonna do this grant because it's been so long since we started this, because we did the federal grant in October, which was the IDEA, where they had no problems. We want to try another grant because it's been such a long time. I worked in corporate where we had audits, and I did audits for years. I've never seen anything take so long. I mean, it was like a Robert Caro book. I mean, they just, I don't know if anybody knows who Robert Caro is, but he writes these books that are like this fat. Okay. And it just went, it just went on and on and on and on and on. And
Yeah.
C'est la guerre.
I know. And the hard part for me at the very end of it was they sprung, you know, we all dealt with the challenges of trying to come to an agreement on how we would handle excess costs last year. You know, I consulted with our attorneys. We got a determination from our attorneys how we would handle it. Bob and I did our due diligence. We worked with Melinda, we worked with all the necessary parties, and we came to an agreement how we would handle it. And then I get their senior partner questioning how we handled it. And the only backup I had was that our attorneys had determined that we were doing it right, because they had determined we were doing it wrong after all of that. Now, that wasn't Ron, and that wasn't the audit managers. It was the compliance partner who has no connection to the department that we worked with regards to this audit. And they wanted to file a non-compliance material weakness, and I refused to accept that. So, and as I say, what we were able to provide was our attorney's opinion, and that then they completely backed off. Anyway, it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion on the Finance Director's report? And if there's none, then we'll move on. We'll go to Turtle Fund update. I don't know if there is any update. I don't know if anybody has an update. If there isn't.
No, we have no update on that. We haven't met since February.
Okay. Just a recurring item on the agenda in case there's an update. So we'll go to new business. First item under new business is appropriate up to $25,000 for legal costs associated with the sewer line extension. And obviously we're aware of the legal proceedings related to this matter. I don't know if anyone has any narrative they didn't want to share about this particular appropriation request. If there is any narrative, feel free to share. But like I said, I think we're all aware of what's going on here.
Amy, would you like to talk on this behalf?
Yes, I'll do my best. As you know, I think it was back in March, if I'm remembering correctly, February or March, the Board of Finance agreed to appropriate $200,000 to cover the litigation costs. That was supposed to go to town meeting, and that was going to happen in March. And as you know, COVID hit and there were no more live meetings, and so we have not been able to go to town meeting. That's one of the issues I want to bring to town meeting, hoping late September, mid-October. In the meantime, there are bills piling up that are approximately total $25,000 that need to be paid. So it was Orla's suggestion to, since you've appropriated the $200,000, to potentially go, but I think that Orla had a creative, not a creative, but a means of funding that amount. And that's where I defer to Orla.
Yeah, so we had talked about a couple of different things. Would we take it out of our labor costs in general for the town? But another suggestion I had was to take it out of contingency. We have $68,900 in contingency right now. And my thought would, if the Board of Finance would agree, we could take it out of contingency, get these bills paid, and refund contingency at such time as we get approval at town meeting to appropriate the funds out of fund balance. It's just a matter of moving the funds around.
And Orla, the contingency that you're talking about, is that from last year's budget? Because these bills are all in the prior year. These bills are all prior to June 30th.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, you're right. Yes, I am referring to last year's budget, and I am referring to last year's contingency, which we actually have $58,000 in. Thanks for the reminder, Amy. Because yes, these all of the current bills that equal approximately 25,000 are all last year's. So either way, we would have to either accrue them in last year for accounting purposes, or we would pay them through last year's books. So, but the goal would be that we would, again, it's an accounting entry. It's more about how we would move the funds around. But what I am suggesting is that we fund it out of the contingency in the general fund for fiscal 20.
Unmuted. We would need a motion on that. Yes. And so how would we word this motion so that we're pulling it from contingency FY20? Is that what we're doing?
You would appropriate up to 25,000 from contingency in the general fund to cover legal costs relating to the sewer litigation.
Both in FY20, meaning contingency from the FY20 budget to pay for FY20 legal fees.
Correct, yes.
So I'll make that in the form of a motion. Dottie, if you have that motion, okay. I know it's kind of coming at you from two different people. All right, she's got the thumbs up. So I'll make that in the form of a motion that we appropriate up to $25,000 to cover legal fees, and it's coming from FY20 contingency, and it's for the purpose of paying FY20 legal bills related to the sewer line extension. I'll make that motion, and is there anyone who will second?
I'll second that.
So Jim's got the second. Any discussion on this motion? Any discussion? All right, well, we are voting to spend some money, and usually when we do that, I go around the table, I do a roll call vote. So I'll start with Steve. How do you vote, Steve?
Yes.
And Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Rhonda, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob Mann, how do you vote?
Rob Mann, yes.
And Rob Wurge, how do you vote?
Rob Wurge, yes.
And I'll vote yes. So this one carries 6-0. So we'll move on to new business B, section B, which is appropriate up to $1,500 for HVAC repairs at the Thompson Ecumenical Empowerment Group, also known as Teague Building. And I imagine that there's probably some discussion, some narrative that goes along with this
Right, and I'd be happy to share that. I believe it was maybe the third week in July, and I should have printed off my emails from Ann Miller. It was in the middle of the major heat wave. We had an issue with the mini split air exchange, and again, I should have printed off the email, so I do apologize for not having that in front of me. But again, it was related to the air conditioning system, and it was the middle of the heat wave. They had an estimate from Windham County Sheet Metal, who has installed the units, has done repairs on the unit, and I felt it was dire need. So I didn't think it was 2 weeks away from our Board of Selectmen meeting, and I felt that it was something she needed to have done. I knew that they were going to cover 500 of it, which would leave the town with just under $1,500 to cover the cost of it. And I brought it to Orla's attention. She suggested we put it on the Board of Finance. And I apologize if I was supposed to bring it to the Board of Selectmen, I neglected to. That's a mistake on my part. But that's the issue surrounding it. It was sort of, like I said, in the middle of the heat wave. So.
This is Steve. I'll make the motion that we appropriate $1,500 for HVAC repairs at Teague from the general fund in 2021, FY 2021.
And Steve, do you want to make the motion appropriate up to $1,500?
I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say if I didn't.
Yeah. And that's fine. We can amend your motion to that effect. Because I believe the quote that came to me was like 1,400 or 1,450, and I just thought, all right, if we just call it 50, we call it up to 15, then if it comes in lower, then we'll just cut them a check for lower. So there's a motion been made by Steve Herbert to appropriate up to $1,500 from the, was it the FY21 budget?
Sure.
And again, where was this coming from?
General fund.
We usually fund it, we typically fund Teague expenses out of contingency. So, you know, in the past, that's where we've appropriated the funds from.
Let me modify my motion then to say on contingency.
Okay, got it. So
I wonder if it would be a good idea to add to it upon approval of the Board of Selectmen. I just wondered if, for consistency, when do you meet again, Amy?
September 1st.
Well, maybe we can work something out with Teague, but it might be a good idea to put that in the narrative.
I'm assuming they need this money like yesterday.
I'm going to just bring up the bill, actually. I think I have the bill here. Bear with me 1 second.
Oh, so the work has already been done?
I don't know. Maybe a quote. I do have some details here.
Oh, it's just a quote.
No, I believe the work was done, Aaron.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was, like I said, it was the middle of the heat wave. They had no AC.
Oh,
okay. So then, I'm just thinking if the work has already been done, then is there any harm in phrasing this motion to say appropriate up to $1,500 subject to approval from the Board of Selectmen, and just let the bill sit for a week or two? I mean, is the vendor going to create problems for Teague if we just let this thing sit until September 2nd?
I doubt it. No, I don't think so. No, I think it'd be fine. I just checked. The date of the bill was August 10th. So even if we took 30 days, we could certainly pay it within the 30 days.
I'll modify my motion to add subject to approval of the Board of Selectmen.
Great. So that means if I follow you, Steve, the motion.
I'm sure I follow myself.
I know. Here, I'll read it back just in poor Dottie. She's probably written it out 5 different ways already. So the motion is to appropriate up to $1,500 from FY21 contingency to pay for the HVA repairs at the Teague building, subject to approval from the Board of Selectmen. And if that sounds fair to everyone, then I'll second that motion. So the motion has now been made and seconded. Any discussion on this motion?
Chairman, may I confirm a little detail? This is Donnie.
Dottie, I can barely hear you.
May I confirm a little detail? The
Okay,
funds
yeah.
are to come from contingency?
FY21 contingency.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, Dottie is muted, so she must have gotten what she was looking for. All right, any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll go around the table. Steve, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rhonda, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob Mann, how do you vote?
Rob Mann, yes.
Rob Wurge, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that carries 6-0. So we'll move on to Board of Finance member comments. Are there any Board of Finance member comments at this time? All right, if there are no Board of Finance member comments at this time, we'll move on to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So Jim's got the motion.
Rob Mann, I'll second that motion.
Rob Mann's got the second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? That carries 6-0. This meeting is now adjourned at 8:56 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night now.